o te rā tuatahi, te kaiarahi, e wui tēnā koe nau I te matai tō tātou nau hui I roto I te karakia, kia tau hoki I te wairua, kia tau hoki I te rangi Māori e wainganui a tātou. Nō reira tēnā koe. O te rā Te Pou Matakana, tēnā koutou, nā koutou te reo pōhiri, te reo karanga, a kua tae mai te motu I wainganui a tātou I tēnei rā. So, you see, I'm going to talk about whānau and leadership, which wasn't actually on the abstract. I sent the abstract in before I'd thought about what I was going to talk about. There's a slight change in direction. But it's a great honour to be invited to speak here. Although, those of you who know Awarangi, when she gives you an invitation, it's actually an instruction. At least that's been the case for the last 40 years or so. I want to talk about whānau and the leadership within whānau, which is a little different from whānau ora and leaders for whānau. Slight difference, but I've been around the country over the last 5 months with the inquiry into mental health, and we've had the opportunity to hear from many, many people, including a large number of whānau. And the story, the news we hear is not great news. In fact, they're not surprised by some of the issues that we hear. So what I wanted to talk a little bit about, first of all, is some of the voices from whānau that we've heard and the issues that they've raised. So this was a pretty common one, that we should be treated with respect and kindness. Our services should acknowledge our mana, our self-esteem, our humanity, always remembering that the patient or the customer or the client is a person. So often people have felt that whether they're seeing a doctor or a lawyer or someone in a department, that they're stereotyped and their own dignity is lost. We've also heard that it would be good to have everyone speaking the same tongue, and that engagement would be much stronger if we can use te reo when that's the language we want to use, that we know how to do bro talk. I have no idea how you do that. But I'm told it's quite important. Or that you know about e-talk. I'm not that good at that one either. And when our body language tells its own story, in other words, if we say one thing and our body says another, we're sending different messages, and that can be a two-way difficulty that people have. Our family should not be excluded from the process, whatever that process is. Whānau should be involved in all decisions about treatment or care or planning for our people. It should not be an optional extra, but that whānau have a right to be there. Sometimes that clashes with what is seen as the rights of privacy, but there is another set of rights which have to do with whānau, and whānau are probably in it for the long term, unlike others who aren't. Some really great wellness programs come from our own community initiatives. We recognise the efforts of our own communities and our people with lived experience to improve health and promote economic and social wellness. So there's a whole lot of programs that we don't normally see as wellness promoting programs, but that's what they are. And I just use Iron Māori as an example. They open their registrations in June and they close it 7 minutes after they open it because it's flooded with 2,000 or so applicants for it. And for those of you who don't know Iron Māori, you've got to do three things. You've got to have a swim, ride a bike, and have a bit of a run or a walk if you'd rather walk. But a fantastic event which is about, in the long run, wellness. And we don't always see it as such. My wife and I have been there several times, and we have because our children participate in it, we have the much more difficult task that while all that is on, we have to look after these mokos. And there's 5 of them, and there's always one that we can't actually see. But the atmosphere of Iron Māori is a strong whānau atmosphere, and it's really a strong champion for wellness. The other thing that has came through very often was that sometimes getting help can be seen as a weakness or a source of shame. We should stop using labels that stigmatise people. The experts should adopt language that is encouraging rather than demeaning. We are not diabetics or schizophrenics or decile one families, but first and foremost, we are people. And the feeling with that is that very often we are addressed as if we are somehow demeaned, and that's what those labels can do. So need to be really careful about always putting people before the diagnosis or before the condition or before the problem. We've heard also that sometimes we can get more relief from rongoa than from clinical treatments. So healing is not the same as treatment. It uses traditional approaches that are less invasive and more accessible. And the challenge is really how to use rongoa alongside effective clinical treatments. They are not incompatible. They were regarded as incompatible. 1907, the Tohunga Suppression Act was passed, which made it an offence to use rongoa or to have rongoa prescribed by tohunga. But that was not until 1964 that act was repealed. But the two together really can make a stronger impact than either one alone. The other question is about who owns the information, who owns the records. Records about me belong to me. We should be able to contribute to writing up this that's Whānau, should be able to contribute to writing up assessment and progress notes so that our voices can be heard alongside the experts. All the records should be sent to us because they are our stories. So that if an assessment is being done and there's a Whānau there, and if the judge has ordered asked for a report, the report should be written primarily to the person sitting in front of whoever's doing the assessment, and that person should contribute to the assessment so that the voice is heard. Joined up treatment and care, the divides between health, education and social services are bigger than the Great Wall of China used to be. We need a joined up system so that we don't get shunted from one agency to another, and that's why whānau ora is so important to us. We heard some really alarming stories about people who have a particular difficulty. They start off with perhaps in an NGO, and they get referred to a GP, and then a GP refers them on to the specialist in the hospital, and the specialist says, "I'm sorry, you don't meet the criteria," back to square one. And that's because our system, a health system, is a fragmented system that needs to be pulled together in a stronger way. And then we've heard that some people just find it a bit hard to engage with health and social services, not necessarily because they are problematic, but there's no clear way for engaging. And I think the professionals call it they don't come back for the second appointment, so it's not the non-compliant people. Actually, the non-compliance has been about a failure to engage, and we know what that's like. That's why we have a ceremony this morning with protocols. That's why whenever you go to a marae, there are ceremonies that helps to engage. We know where we stand. Everybody knows where they are, and the engagement can occur. Engagement with health and social services is a bit ad hoc and very often feels people disengaged rather than engaged, and so they get labelled as non-compliant. And we spend too much time sorting out one crisis after another and not enough time getting well. Our services need to adopt a recovery goal that leads on to good health and social and economic wellness. Fixing up the problem or eliminating the symptom is just one step along the way. So this is the problem that we see so often. A crisis comes up, crisis intervention occurs, which is good, and it's left there once the crisis is settled. There is a goal beyond settling the crisis. there's a goal beyond fixing up a symptom or relieving a symptom, and that goal is wellness, Māori ora. So they are the 10 hallmarks of impact and satisfaction, mana and dignity. We shouldn't demean the people we're working with. Speak the same language, whatever that language happens to be. Whānau and family are important. Communities have their own solutions, and we should recognise that. We should make sure that we don't use terms that stigmatise people or shame people, and that healing and treatment can go together. Information exchange is important. Information belongs to the people who are for whom the help is offered. Our systems need to be much better joined up than they are at present. Engagement should be genuine, and that knowing wellness is a goal to aim for. We've heard the same stories all around the country. They're relevant to us today as we talk about whānau ora, and they're all issues which I know that whānau ora is attempting to address. But now I want to talk about what Abarangi told me I had to talk about, which was about understanding whānau leadership. And the questions, two questions, is it leadership for whānau or leadership by whānau? And sometimes we can fall into the first without remembering that the ultimate aim is that whānau should be self-managing and self-directing and have their own leadership. We can be our own leaders. Well, our own leaders are part of every whānau. Every whānau has its leaders, some of them in potential leaders waiting for the opportunity, but they might be mothers and fathers, kui and koro, rangatahi, when they grow up, matua and whaia, tūngane, tuahine, all potential leaders within a whānau. So whānau are rich with leaders, but the richness is often not given an opportunity to be realised. Our own leaders help realise the aspirations of the whānau. They go from fixing things up to making life-changing leaps and moving on from yesterday to reach tomorrow. And our whānau leaders know yesterday. They know what it was like yesterday. They have a glimpse of tomorrow, and they want to take their whānau with them to the future. Our own leaders keep the whānau grounded in whakapapa, grounded in whenua, grounded in hapori and iwi, and grounded at home, so that they're not floating nebulously in a community or floating nebulously in society, but they're firmly grounded. And it's our own leaders within whānau, who have the best opportunity to ground our whānau. Our own leaders transform whānau who are trapped into whānau who are free. They lift the wairua, shape the direction, and find a way out. The reality is that many whānau are trapped and locked into a position that they can't get out of, and that can go on from one generation or 2 generations or more than 2 generations. And the only real way that's going to change has got to come from within whānau, which is why whānau leadership is so critical. Our own leaders connect the whānau. They renew old ties. They bring in whānau who live away. They hold hui, which I'm told go much better than face-to-face hui. Well, you can't see the eyes rolling. And importantly, they settle old disputes. And many whānau are disconnected because of things that happened 2 or 3 generations ago, which have no bearing on today, certainly none on the future. And it's the only people who can address that are leaders within the whānau. Our own leaders link whānau with the past and the future, so they understand the heritage. They're part of a whānau and they know the whānau heritage, they know the richness of it, and they know how to use that to work towards future opportunities for future generations. Our own leaders share the leadership within the whānau. They invite sons and daughters, nieces and nephews, aunties and uncles to work alongside them and to acquire leadership skills. whānau leaders are servants to their whānau. Got to be careful, we need to be careful that when we become leaders, we don't assume that everyone is a servant to us. Whānau leaders are servants to their whānau. That's what gives them their greatness, and that's what gives them their strength. Our own leaders collaborate with other leaders beyond the whānau. So bad leaders build walls so that no one can get in to the whānau and no one can go out from the whānau. So they isolate the whānau. Good leaders collaborate with the leaders beyond the whānau to create opportunities for their own people. And the opportunities might be within Te Ao Māori, the opportunities might be in wider society, whether it's in educational and financial development or employment. They want to be able to act as go-betweens with their own family and with the world outside. They want our people, they want whānau to stand tall alongside others. And our own leaders endorse a whānau kawa. That is, they believe that tikanga and te reo should play a major role in the day-to-day lives of whānau. We're very strong on tikanga and kawa when we go to a marae. We know exactly what to do, who stands in front, who comes behind, who does the first voice, the woman's voices, karanga, where people sit, where people don't sit. When you go across to hongi, do you go from left to right or from right to left? I mean, I've never seen a marae which has a notice on the front, this is a left to right marae. You just follow the person in front, and if they get bad looks, go the other way. But we use kawa as a way of engaging and a way of living lives safely, so that everyone on a marae, they've made clear, that's what the whai kōrero, people are not saying welcome, 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 they're saying who are you to come to our place, and you have an answer. And there can be quite a lot of this, what takes a little bit long sometimes to get it straight. So one speaker might stand up, this never happened today by the way, but one speaker might stand up and say, we're not sure we want you to be here because we remember the way you treated our auntie. So then someone from the other side stands up. Yes, we're sorry about that, but you know more than we do how difficult your auntie was. And that's the reason you sent her to us. And so it goes back and says, yes, I'm sorry about that, we should. But by the time they come together, it's clear that they're coming together on the same terms. And we don't always have a kawa within whānau, so that what we do clarifies the situation, what we do ensures that we're safe and that we want closeness between us. So a challenge, I think, for whānau leaders is to be looking at, should the principles of kawa apply to day-to-day living, or do we just leave it to something that happens on the marae? So these are the characteristics then of whānau leaders. First of all, they're part of the whānau. They're not from outside the whānau, they're an integral part of the whānau. They help to realise the aspirations of whānau. They ground the whānau in whakapapa, in tikanga, in whenua, in iwi, and on marae. They connect the whānau within the whānau. They transform trapped whānau into free whānau. They link whānau with the past and the future. They share the leadership within the whānau, they don't keep it to themselves, and they collaborate with other leaders beyond the whānau, and they endorse a whānau kawa. So they are the points that I wanted to raise today. Our own whānau leaders don't always become great leaders by themselves. This is not suddenly you wake up in the morning and say, right, I'm a leader today. Although I know some families where it's like that, but they have the opportunities to gain the skills of leadership, and to work alongside other Māori leaders will be important. So it's not a question of taking the role of leader for a whānau, it's a question of developing leadership within a whānau. That's why whānau ora is so important, because its task is essentially to do that, to help whānau develop their own skills, their own competence, their own leaders, so that they can be more assured. If there is no leadership within a whānau, it's very unlikely that things will change. So a huge challenge there, I think, to whānau ora is to help build leadership within whānau. We've heard of the fantastic things that whānau ora are doing, the fantastic leaders that are within whānau ora, within Te Pou Matakana, within all the whānau collectives around this room. And we now need to see that translated into fantastic leadership within whānau, so that whānau can be free from trauma in the past. So that's basically what I wanted to say. Just one small point. I thought I'd give you an equation. You've probably seen it before. ILFW plus ILBW equals WO squared. You're familiar with that, that equation? What it means, of course, is that ILFW are inspired leadership for whānau, ILBW is inspired leadership by whānau, and WO2 is whānau tino ora. So if you forget everything I've said, just remember the equation and you'll have it. So I think I might leave it there, Stacey. Thanks again for a fantastic day today, some great talks we've had. We've had this all in the knowledge that what we're doing is really helping whānau be self-managing, self-directing and self-sufficient. Kia ora.